Your Daily Dose. My name is Robert, here with my pal Susan. We are talking Storytelling 101 with ChatGPT Assist, a workshop put on by Yes and Exercise to help people become comfortable with understanding what it is, how they can use it, and how to play with it. So there are important parameters and ramifications about this. A lot of people worry about plagiarism, and
Mhm.
rightfully so. We really want to make sure that we aren't just running to the end after a stage 1A and thinking that's a finished product. And I think the current legal understanding of fair use is a good guide base here that we can think about it and consider it and talk about why the law is as it is, and it'll help us to define the use of ChatGPT. So, two important lines, and I think you're familiar with both of these. Number one,
Yeah.
everything's a remix. Have you seen those videos? I forget.
No, not those.
So, okay, they're on YouTube. I highly encourage everyone to watch them. A
Okay.
fantastic series done by a guy who basically is breaking down creativity through the use of pop culture and pointing out how everything has been remixed, and
Okay.
brought forward. This is the nature of creativity. You know this one, I know. Steal like an artist, yeah. How
Sure.
do you feel about that phrase and the series, perhaps by Austin Kleon?
Well, I really enjoyed the book and doing the blackout stuff.
Yeah.
The there was another. What was it in the '60s or '70s? Steal this book.
Hmm.
um, that I remember back then. It was sort of shocking. So this is it's just the opposite. It's setting us a scenario that it's a good thing. It's making you look at it and you hear it and it's like this is I'm being invited to do this thing that previously was considered off unacceptable.
Well, the paraphrase of the old line is, good artists borrow, great artists steal, right? I
Yeah,
think that was
yeah, yeah,
Picasso or somebody, and that's the idea here is permission, and basically demystification of the creative process. That there is this damnable myth that artists are born and from the womb they walk out going, "Ah, Mona Lisa, grab me a paintbrush, mother," at 1 day old. I mean,
and all
no.
the rest of us are
Right.
not.
Oh, we can
So
just sit and stare and go, "Oh, good for
right,
you. We're so blessed for you." It's like,
yeah,
it's
right,
stupid,
yeah,
right? We
yeah.
all kind of back to your thing earlier about, Ellie and the dragons. That's been in you for a while. It needed whatever time it needed for you to become the explorer, navigator, skilled writer on this particular plane to find her and them, but it's been there.
No,
You know?
nobody gave it to me. I
No.
had to
Well,
uncover it, I guess. But
in helping you frame it, which I'm glad to say I've had the joy of doing, we've said, what realm are we in? We're in fantasy. So what have we done? We've leaned on things like the Phantom Toll Booth. We've leaned on Harry Potter. You're not doing those stories, but you're playing with elements of those stories, which, by the way, those stories played with elements of ones before them. I mean, we talk about Alice in the Wonderland, right? Absurdism and all that sort of stuff. So that's in a form stealing like an artist right there, saying, what realm
yeah,
am I in?
there's another part, at least for me, that if you haven't had the exposure to something, like, let's say science fiction, like hardcore science fiction, or Stephen King, hardcore, horror stuff. It's not; those are not genres I've read, and yet if I'm asked to touch on that a little bit to make my story better, I have to go through this comfort a transformation from
Right.
not comfortable to sort of at least try. And that's one of the things that ChatGPT could do for me is just throw some words out there. But
You're
with
right.
respect to the plagiarism, I don't know if we're going back to that,
We
but
will.
I've found every once in a while like a phrase, just a use of a few words that I just think works. And I'll just look at it and I'll be so stuck because I I know I didn't write it, And if I can substitute a word, that totally takes away the plagiarism, risk.
Yes,
I don't
it's
really know. My guess is I'm being far too harsh and constrictive.
yeah, it may be. You maybe heard this one before, the 99 monkeys with 99 typewriters in a room for 99 years. Have you heard about that? The premise is with that scenario, they'd write all the works of Shakespeare and beyond, right? So what it's saying is there's so many words and so many possibilities that yeah, you're going to line up words in a sentence and a phrase in a way that go the same way. The conscientious part of washing it through, washing it through, washing it through, rewriting, pulling it apart, going, that's the remix. That's where you're going to find it. A phrase works. Yeah, I'll give you another story that this really threw me very early in my creative career. I have a play that became a movie called Emotionally Retarded. And for those who hear that word and bristle, please know that's the clinical use of the word. Yes, it's a comedy. However, it meant someone who was emotionally undeveloped in a humorous way. So it's not meant to offend the community at all. That's the name of the project. There's my caveat. Um, when I that title alone, being incendiary, I didn't know where I came up with it, but I was wow, that's really something. So I was rereading a Michael Crichton book called Sphere, and I see, and there's a line in there, and he said something about, oh, but Ted wasn't emotionally retarded. He was just XYZ. Guess who the name of my character in Emotionally Retarded
Oh,
was? It
no
was
way.
Ted.
Oh
I
no.
I mean, I was back then reading a ton, and I didn't realize that I was taken by that phrase, named
Oh
my
boy.
character Ted, and at some point named the play Emotionally Retarded. It had nothing to do with the novel Sphere, nothing. However, those elements came from that, and when I saw it upon the reread of that, I was shocked, and I went, "Oh, everything's a remix." Before, of course, that title even was out there.
Yeah,
Just let me
yeah,
know that again, we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, and so you know, this is
yeah.
also why we'll get into the legal part now. Down the road, when we do get into publishing things, yeah, people hire what they call errors and omissions types of legal people for just that. We make mistakes. There was a big legal case not, 10 years ago. Gosh, with Tom Petty, and I'm forgetting, he's a British big time pop artist, wrote the song Stay With Me, I think. And it was the hook was just like Tom's. And
No.
basically, Tom ended up suing him. And they went to court and they settled. And he said, there's no bad feelings. There was no bad intention here. It's close enough to where we made a deal on what it was. And I'm sure Tom got some recompense for it.
Hmm.
But I mean, it wasn't because he tried to steal. Like anything else, we credit. Let's talk about the law here for a minute because I think it
Yeah.
helps. There's a four-part test, and I'm very familiar with this from having studied it, from having been through a copyright case of one of my own works. And here it is. Here's the four-part test. Number one, the purpose and character of the use. In other words, the use is what you're pulling from, including whether it is commercial or nonprofit educational. How are you using it? How is it being distributed, right? So that's the first one. If it is for a nonprofit or education purposes, you're somewhat protected. If you're exploiting for pure commercial and monetary value, you're much less protected. So that's one. Questions or comments on that one?
No, that's pretty helpful to know that.
Pretty clear. Two, the nature of the copyrighted work. Is it factual or creative? Is it published or unpublished? Whether it's readily available for purchase. So again, this gets into where people can use, observe, be part of what you're doing. Was it put out freely, open source? Again, you have more protection. And all of these things, by the way, these are guidelines. When you get into legal matters, lawyers will argue the extremes on both
Yeah.
sides. I should caveat all this. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not trying to
Right,
tell you
right.
how to do your work. I'm just telling you what the law says. Okay. So again, back to distribution. How are you using it? Where can the public access it?
Hmm.
And again, is it readily available for purchase? And once there is monetary exchange for it, that's going to put you in a place of more of being responsible for it. The amount and sustainability of the portion used. Okay. Go ahead.
Substantiality.
Substantiality. Yeah.
Substantial.
Sustainability. Substantiality. How much are you
Substantial.
taking?
That's substantial. That's an awkward word.
So here's what that means in this
Of
context.
portion.
It's saying basically, you know, Are you taking the heart of a piece or are you taking the fingernail of the piece? A fingernail clipping, right? A
Yeah.
fingernail clipping, no one's going to bother with. They're like, oh, but if you took the very heart of it and that is the heart of yours too, now you've kind of Frankensteined your thing into something like your monster looks a lot like my monster, right?
Yeah.
So how much of it, how much of substance of the thing
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
taking?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, for sure.
Okay. And then finally, the effect of the use on the potential market for the copyrighted work, the thing you took from. Are you hurting the sales of what you took from? Or as we've come to find in the last 30 years of really, the internet being what it is, remember the terror of the 90s and the Napsters of the world where everyone was getting sued for, this, that, and the other, until we realized that, what, the more people remix things and credited those with whom they sampled or took
Yeah.
from,
Yeah.
the more the original work rose in prominence and sales. Artists have had second, third, fourth lives based on creative remixes of their work. And so, again, by and large, following these, test rules here, there's ways to navigate, what you're taking from. And again,
Yeah.
what ChatGPT is taking from.
Well, and in my case, it's literally something as small as a few words put together. It's not a concept that I started with. Just as you did not start with Michael Crichton's sphere
Yeah.
and take the name of the
Nope.
character and diagnosis.
Right.
It was like just random small stuff. So,
But
um,
that's how it happens. And that's why, I mean, I do think this understanding the law is a good way of grounding yourself in how you'll use ChatGPT. That work?
yes, I don't, yeah, it should be very, I think, freeing.
Yeah, I hope so too, because that's what fair use is meant for. That they what they call the chilling effect, in other words, the freeze on creativity based on something being too locked in place. That's not fair. The fair use is there to say society needs to grow. Society needs
Yeah.
fair use of anything. And yes,
Hmm.
the artist needs fair protection to make a fair amount of money off of what he she or they
Hmm.
made. However, there's limits because the social good, the greater good outweighs the individual at some point. And again, there's much distinction in that, but I think that's good for this slide. You good?
I want to go back to Tom Petty, and
Go
this
ahead.
made me think of George Harrison getting sued for 4 notes or 8 notes.
Was it George Harrison or are you thinking of from Creedence Clearwater? Because I know he got sued too. What do you, George Harrison sued? I'll just type that in and see if I can pick up that case.
I think it was, but it was some
Oh, My Sweet Lord.
girls
Okay.
prop. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
So the chiffons hit. They said so. So it sounded
yes,
like he's so fine.
yes. And
Got it.
I thought to myself, there are only so many notes. There are like eight, and but then if you include the sharps and flats,
Well,
maybe there's 12.
but yeah, yeah.
How,
Uh-huh.
how can you say this ordering these notes in this way is not okay?
Yeah. Well, that has been the subject of many, many cases.
Hmm.
And I mean, how you can be sued um, based on the arrangement of the music. I mean, the beat, there were, where this really came into prominence, and I think you'll enjoy the Everything's a Remix videos. Go back
Yeah.
and look at that was in hip hop. And that's why that title fits so well because hip hop when it came about specifically in the 80s, it started in the 70s, but really in the 80s when it became a market and it was making money, it was based on sampling others' works. Well, what does that mean? You're literally taking what they've done and you're
Yeah.
looping a piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is transformative, but at what level? I mean, do you owe something? And generally speaking, the answer is yes, you do owe something. But back to the legal test for how. There's another one that I mentioned, John Fogerty. Have you heard about his lawsuit?
Were we talking about that in class the other day,
I
maybe?
may have, and John Fogerty got sued by the guy, his former record label, Fantasy, because the old man down the road, which he did as a solo, sounded too much like Run Through the Jungle, the Creedence Clearwater hit. And he had to, in court, play the notes to try to sway the jury to say,
Oh,
here's how they're
cool.
different.
Wow.
And I think he did. There was some sort of settlement. He didn't cleanly win, but he won. But there was something. At any rate, yeah, copyright. I guess broadly, just good conversation. Because back to Chat GPT, be aware. Do be aware. It's important to understand. And again, from an easily digestible standpoint, read Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist, watch those videos where everything's a remix. It'll give you a foundation and I think some freedom to go, okay, this is how I'm going to use ChatGPT and this is how I'm not going to use it.
Well, and in the context of cinema therapy, you're going to give it to your trusted reader, and you're
Yeah.
going to give it to your Sherpa, and you're going to get some feedback as to whether or not you're playing with fire.
Very much so. Very much so. And playing with fire is going to be our next episode because ChatGPT does have limitations. And some classmates have brought this up that they've gotten little notices on things. I want to talk about those because ChatGPT, as much as it's there to do as much as it can, there's legal on its side too. That I think you run into this. So we're going to hold off on that. We'll do
Yeah,
this in the next
yeah,
episode. See you
yeah.
in the next dose.